Um, the child welfare system, we're in a really bad time. Ever since this federal act in the 1990s came about, which the incentive was to adopt kids out as fast as possible, and then depending on the quotas, they get federal money for the state. And so, like I told you guys in the beginning, what ended up happening was they were like, yay, oh, there's not as many kids in foster care, right? They're all adopted out. But what it did was it really disadvantaged the parent, because it put the parent on a time constraint where they didn't have enough time to work their case plan.
For the prosecutor to choose who they want to convict, race or the demographic now has to keep on their record that they were convicted of a crime. And many times these crimes targeted get convicted. Do you think they're going to get good job opportunities? Go try to apply for a job with a criminal conviction on your record. The poverty statistics. Well, I wonder why. I wonder why the poverty statistics are so low in some races.
Hey.
Hello.
You guys.
It's one group in power, and you're the next victim.
I actually don't hear you anymore, Les.
Oh, I was sorry. I was on mute. I was just making sure we were going live on all the channels because I have to play around with settings. But hello, everybody. We are here tonight for Queens of Cause. And we are going to be interviewing two queens with huge platforms and huge advocacy efforts. And we're going to start first with Jazmin Corley. But before we start with her, I'd like to welcome Stephen, who is the other co-host. And Stephen, if you'd like to say hi to everybody.
Hello, everybody. How are you guys? Glad to see you here. Glad to have you.
Awesome. Jazmin, you there? You there? If not, we can always go. We can move on to Molly if we need to do that. If that might, until Jazmin gets herself set up, we can move to Molly. So let's start with Molly then while Jazmin's getting herself situated.
Okay,
Molly.
that's fine. Hi, how is everybody tonight?
Okay.
Good. How are you this
morning? I can't see some. It's just a blank screen, so I don't know who my speaking.
No, it's a blank screen because I was re-caulking my driveway today.
Oh, it's okay.
I had an accident.
No
and
worries.
Of course, it would be the day that I have to give an interview and people would need to see me, right?
Wait. Oh my gosh, Jazmin was there the whole time. I'm so sorry. Let's do the original. I apologize.
Okay,
I already told Jazmin. No, I'm sorry about that. I just didn't see her. She came in and came out. So Jazmin, welcome. And thank you so much for joining us tonight for Queens of Cause. Can you go ahead and introduce yourself? I guess, how you just briefly, the title that you hold, and you're just briefly, explain what your platform is.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Jazmin Corley. I'm the pageant director and coach of Elegance Empire Queens of the South here in Mississippi. I also national recruiter for the Little Miss Black USA in Maryland in DC area. And what we do here is we try to uplift our youth and younger teens, and also our adulthood, because we're never too old to be teachable. So, and we also advocate for autism rights in children and adults and teens. We also do women rights and women's prison reform rights. So, yeah, and we showcase everybody's talent through pageantry.
That's awesome. And I always like to, because I had no idea. This is why I started doing this show. I was ignorant to pageants, right? I thought it was like toddlers and tiaras. And then I got involved and I realized that actually a huge population of people that do pageants are older than 30. And it's really for the advocacy work behind it. And so that's why I started a magazine, and I was featuring girls like yourself, because I think it's so important, and it's wonderful that you're offering that to other women as well, Jazmin.
Yes, ma'am. I started with my daughter got me into doing it about 4 years ago. So that's actually how I got into it, and I love it with her. So yeah.
No, it's awesome. It gives you something to dress up for too, right?
It really does.
And us girls like that. Anyways, I want to ask you, and Stephen, feel free to chime in if you have a question. So Jazmin, when you came up with this platform, because a lot of people that I've interviewed, they usually they have some sort of personal connection to it. Was there a personal tie with what you were advocating for?
Yes, I have an 11-year-old daughter who has autism. And I advocate for women's rights, of course, because I'm a woman and a domestic violence survivor as well. So I advocate a lot for women because that's just who I am. Because I've been through a lot as a woman, as a Black woman in America. So,
Absolutely.
and the prison reform comes with I have a best friend who's in prison. So, she speaks to me about a lot that goes on behind there. And they also have drawn beauty pageants into the prison system as well.
Wow.
Awesome
That
thing is
That's awesome. Because Steve and I were having this conversation, and I want to throw this out there because it's always good to bring awareness. Um, you know, we were explaining, as anybody who goes to prison, it's the prosecutor's choice whether or not they want to prosecute somebody, right? And I was pulling the statistics. I actually sent them to Steven the other day, and there's like 60 to 70% of people that get arrested, the prosecutor just decides not to prosecute, right? And so then our country comes out with these statistics about, oh, this race has this amount of crimes. Well, how is that even accurate, right? When the prosecutor's choosing who to prosecute. You know what I
right.
mean? To me, it just doesn't make any sense. And then, I have a friend sitting in jail right now, who's actually an attorney, didn't do a darn thing, and she was a victim of domestic violence. And she got charged with failure to protect. When she was beat up, she had a concussion. She had staples in her scalp. And then her husband went to the child, and because she didn't jump in because she was in such a disarrayed state, they charged her with failure to protect, and she's been in jail since August.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is so
Yeah.
yeah.
So Jasmine, I got a question for you. So how long has your friend been away?
11 years.
11 years. She has children?
No, she actually didn't get the chance to do that because I think she went away when we were like 21. She
Okay.
actually and she was going through domestic violence as well.
Okay. Okay. Great. Does she have more? I mean, does she have much time left or?
Well, she went up for parole recently, but they denied it. They said that she didn't do enough time on
Okay.
her manslaughter
And,
charge.
and we don't need to talk about the charge, but I mean that's not important. But just to know that, okay, so she just have a future where she can get home at some point, right?
Right.
So has your organization been able to visit people who are incarcerated like your friend? Have you ever thought about doing stuff like that?
Yes, I have. I'm actually in the works of getting a program together so we can go into the prisons and mentor and actually have pageants there with their platforms and just talk to them about coming back into society and trying to mentor them back into society and let them know that it's people out here that will help them and they're not alone.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I will say, Jasmine, because I practiced family law, and I dealt with a lot of domestic violence injunctions. And I learned a lot about domestic violence. I mean, I was a victim myself. And um, can you explain? Because I'm sure since this is an area, it's not just physical that is abuse. There's coercive control. You want to explain on that too to everybody, in case they just think it's just a mere physical beating up. There's a lot that encompasses.
So, domestic violence comes in all forms: physical, mentally, emotionally, and I feel like emotionally and mentally is way worse than physically. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's a mind control thing with emotionally, mentally. So I mean that's way worse than actually getting physically. You know,
Well, they say if you control the mind, you control the body, right? So you're right. That is more more damaging. So being a survivor of that, do you have any people that you mentor in reference to the likeness of what you actually been through?
Um, I actually talked to maybe like two or three people, but I actually hadn't really referenced into mentoring because I'm actually just getting to the point where I'm comfortable to talk about it
I got you. Yeah, understood.
at
Understood.
that point.
Right,
And
right.
Jasmine, I want to ask you, have you thought, because I know, and I'm sure being, a victim of this, the whole power and control dynamic, a lot of these women, and I just want to kind of elaborate a little bit on this. They're stuck. They're like slaves in their own home. They can't leave. They don't have necessarily family to go to. And even when you call the shelters, they're always booked up and you have to get a screening. You could be in a dire emergency. If you have children, they don't always have room for you.
That's
But I do want to say that there's some great hotlines out there that you can call at any time of the night. And it's just sometimes nice to just have that support, and with your pageant, which I think, and I want to ask you about this, because when you tell me a lot of these women's self-esteem is torn apart. They
Right.
have lost everything, they've lost their friends, their identity. They're one step away from suicide, a lot of people. Okay.
right.
This is a serious problem, and the demographics on this is very high, and people don't even realize this. Um, have you thought about doing something, I guess with your pageant, because I would believe that would bring these women back, like kind of to a sisterhood, because they need that support, help their self-esteem. Can you expand on that and how it relates to your platform with your pageant?
Yes. How that relates is we help build their self-esteem back up. We let them know regardless of what you went through, how you feeling, how you looking, because everybody don't look like what they've been through, and some people do. So, we just advocate and let them know like it doesn't matter what you've been through, what you're going through, how much money you got. It doesn't matter what you have. You're always a queen here with us, whether you step on the stage and do the pageant thing or not.
Right. So basically, once, say for instance, you have a pageantry function, um, it's not over after the function, right? You still stay connected with those young ladies, and you speak with them on a regular basis, as much as you can, right? Because you're only one person.
Yeah.
How's that? How do you manage that?
I actually manage that. I actually have to have a schedule, panned out because, like I said, I'm only one person.
Right.
So, what I do is I try to reach out at least, 2 or 3 days a week just to check in. How you doing? How you feeling? What are you feeling today? Have you, I'll send like Bible scriptures or verses, pertaining to that day, or how they're feeling. I always send words of encouragement.
That's awesome. Let me
Awesome.
ask you. Let me ask you a question, because this is a huge problem as well, and you see this a lot in domestic violence injunctions and whatnot. And with this new failure to protect laws that came out, that's really silenced women. And a lot of women, and I want to know if you've encountered this, are a lot of women afraid to report in your experience because they're afraid that child services is going to get involved and take their children from them. Have you encountered anything like that?
Well, no, where I live is kind of like, you know, they don't really just focus on the child. It's basically the adults. They've gotten to the point where, if they're being called too many times, they actually take both to jail now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they,
Okay.
like where I
Well,
live, really focus on the um things of taking the children.
yeah, because they have now, it's with the Department of Children and Families, if there's domestic violence, that's grounds. Even if the mother didn't touch the child, that's grounds to remove a child. And I try to tell people this all the time that are in these sort of situations, but it's scary because you know what I mean? It's like you're kind of you're stuck, you don't have a place to go. And then if you report it, you chance your kids getting taken away. And it's happened numerous times I've witnessed in the court system. And that's a big problem, you know.
And that's great to know because I never knew that was going on. So that's great to know.
Yeah, no, it's huge, and they attribute a lot of it to this new law called failure to protect, because now they can charge the woman. You know, like I said, my friend got beat up worse than her child. Her child was bruised, and she had the suit, you know, the concussion, the whole thing. And if you look on her record now, she's deemed a child abuser, criminal
Wow.
record, failure to protect. Her children were terminated. She lost her parental rights. Her kids were adopted out, and she's sitting in jail and has been since August.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That
So Jazz,
the system.
right. Go ahead, Jasmine.
A lot of people think the system is designed for women, but really and truly is actually designed to tear all of us down,
Absolutely.
not just
Absolutely, we all agree
her
with that.
as a whole. So, I mean, that is just crazy.
Yeah.
Well, do you find from your experience, just being in that type of environment or seeing that type of environment, you touched on something that's a huge issue when you mentioned that the system is geared to tearing really families apart, right? Not just women, but children, the men, tearing them apart. Do you understand why it's created that way? Do you know? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Um, I feel like it's more of a isolation thing for women and as men, because let's just use for example, like you were saying, tearing the family apart. When you remove the father from the home, what happens? You have to go put the father on child support to get all these benefits. So it's still kind of like a hinder. The mom is still hindered through the government, because if she don't do this with the father, then she can't get all these benefits, or some of that nature. And the father is still hindered because he has to be ordered to pay that. If he doesn't pay that, then what happens? He goes to jail. He gets something like his license or something taken away. So
Mhm.
either way it go on both parties, it's ruining them,
Right.
and it's keeping them in a feud, so they can't even co-parent.
I'm hand tomorrow. I've got a trial and a divorce. You know, because I do, like I said, I do divorce law, and I it's horrible. And it's crazy because what I've noticed, like for instance, I was emailing all day back and forth with the opposing counsel, and I want to be cohesive because I say, look, these parents are going to have to co-parent until their child ages out. Why are you trying to create animosity? Why are you trying to create all this anger and frustration? And I blame the attorneys, okay, because they say, well, it's money to them. If you think about it, the more that the people are fighting, the more they need the attorney, and then it's all connected, right? So you got, in some cases when they have like guardian ad litems appointed and all this other stuff, it just becomes a big crap show. You know what I mean? And it's fueled off of conflict. And
Hmm.
it becomes basically what I could never understand. It's like people could be married, happy, have a kid, and all of a sudden filing of divorce happens, and now they're taking allegations in opposite directions. And you're wondering, well, how did they ever allow the child to stay alone with the other parent? You know what I mean? Just a week later, right? But it's designed that way, and that's not in all the countries. They say countries like Finland, that's the happiest. It's just it's known you're just getting 50-50. There's no need to fight. All right, who's the better parent, right?
But yeah,
But
that's what I. It's all a money issue. It's just
yeah,
it's taken away from each parent, and it's keeping the mother down because it's keeping her to where she can't work, so she has to get those benefits. And it's keeping the father down when he's not able to pay it, and it's taking away something that he needs to actually go to work to make that money. So it's all money.
well, I
But
mean, why would you take someone's license away when they can't? They're not paying child support, and it makes no logical sense. You're going to take their license away now; they can't even drive to work.
exactly.
Do you
Just
think, Jasmine, too, that it goes a little deeper than money?
it
Have you ever
does.
thought about that? Yeah, because we don't want to ignore the elephant in the room, right?
It
So,
does.
so I think it has to do with a form of genocide if I'm using too strong of a word, where the justice system might look at a specific race of people and they might apply the law strongly when it comes to them, opposed to
I will
another thing.
absolutely back that up. Like I said, I've worked in the system. I will back that up 100%.
Yeah.
I,
Do
I agree.
you see that?
Yes, I agree with that. Being a mother, a Black mother at that, I definitely agree with it. They make it hard. The system actually make it hard, especially with all these new laws they got coming up now in 2025. They definitely about to make it hard for our minorities.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Right.
like I said, it's now kids can get removed from their parents on neglect charges, right? And that's very subjective, very opinion based. Steve and I were talking about this, and a lot of times, again, and if you, I told Steven the other day, I think it starts with targeting a race for criminal acts, because if 60% are walking away with nothing on their record, why aren't they being reported? And then what happens is, then when someone goes to jail, they come out, they try to get a job and they can't get a good job. So then you can't you can't move up in life because you're constantly being pressed down. And then what happens is, then you're not making the money that you wanted to make, because now you got something on your record that they targeted you for, and you can't get it expunged because it costs too much money to do it. And then they come into your house and tell you you're not supporting your kids, you're neglecting them because you don't have all this money, and they remove them. I mean, it's this vicious cycle. And you can't tell me. It's like, if we had a perfect system where everybody that got arrested had the same equal treatment, I wouldn't be saying this. But when there's prosecutorial discretion, they have a choice.
Explain that to her. Explain, if you don't know. Do you know what prosecutorial discretion is?
No,
Jeff,
explain.
Okay,
please
let me explain. A
explain.
prosecutor, okay, discretion is anytime you have a choice. A judge has a discretion. They have broad discretion. Okay, they can make choices. They can interpret the laws from here to here. But when a prosecutor is assigned a case, so what happens is, somebody files a police report. The investigator investigates. Then it's sent to the state, right, to the prosecutor. The prosecutor reviews the case. You get a letter, and they decide whether or not they want to prosecute that case.
Stop there for a second.
Yeah.
They decide
Mm-hmm.
whether or not to prosecute you. That's where the danger is.
That's
right
the problem.
there.
That's
the
why you
problem
can.
right there. So they
you
can decide
cannot-
not to prosecute you, right? But
Right.
but on the other spectrum of that, they have the discretion to decide, and that's when you realize that part of it.
Nobody
Yeah,
knows
90
about that. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, go ahead, Jazmin. Sorry.
90% of minority people are prosecuted.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, and how's that trickle into the family? How's that contribute to domestic violence? How's that contribute to? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It contributes because, like I said, 90% are prosecuted, and taking away parents and out the home. Let's just say, your friend as an example. I don't know if her husband was prosecuted for what he did or not.
Well, he's been in jail, but he's former military, and he had like a PTSD moment, and that's when he went crazy. But he's been sitting in jail. He hasn't had his trial yet.
Okay, so
Yeah.
let me use that example. Being that both parents are in jail, that hurts the child more, because now the child doesn't have any parent. So being that domestic violence situation with removing both of them instead of one, that was a mistake on their end as well. Instead of them they only looked into him being military, and I feel like that's the only thing that they focused on, and that's why she's where she is.
Well, think about this too, Jazmin. Think about all the kids out there. We'll just say minority kids who lose their father because their father goes to jail. Now they don't have it. They don't have a role model, right? They don't know how maybe to control. You know what I'm saying? And it's the whole thing is messed.
Yeah.
Is flawed.
I
It
agree
is.
with that, because my children's father was one in and out the system, in and out the system. So now he's to the point where he just can't get himself together because of the choices he made being in and out the system.
Well,
I agree with that.
it's geared to, the system is geared to psychologically mold you.
Yes,
So
and now
go
he's
ahead.
a so,
Go ahead,
and
Jack.
now when these parents get into the system and then they come out, it's like now they're targets of the system.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then CPS comes in your home. We pulled the demographics on CPS the other day.
Yeah, that was
It's
interesting.
50% more than the Caucasian of African American children that are adopted out and removed from their families. 50% difference.
Well,
That's
we did that. We
crazy.
also did the analytics on the United States and their incarceration rate compared to the rest of the
Oh,
world.
they're the highest. They're the
They're the
highest.
highest in the world. So again, it's a huge problem. But awareness is important. When you agree to
I agree.
know, know that those things are happening, would you agree that it gives you a better ability to navigate through that or
Yeah.
train your children? Do you have those conversations with them, your
Yes,
children?
I do. I do.
Yeah,
I actually, when I speak to my children, I actually speak to them for the future.
right.
That's
Do
how I
you have
speak
do
to
you have do you have boys and girls, a boy and a girl?
I have a boy and two girls.
Boy and two girls, yes. So would you have, of course, you have concern for all of them, but
Yes.
is it a greater concern for one more than the other, like for a boy than for a girl, or you equally concerned about them both navigating?
Uh, I equally concerned about them both navigating simply because black men in America is always going to be a target. Um, Even the day you was born, you was a target in America, being a black little boy. So that is my biggest fear. Even if you're not bothering anyone as a black man, you still can have something happen to you just because of the color of your skin. As a black woman, I fear the struggles of things that I've had to go through. Basically, like depending on the system. I had to depend on the system at one point in my life, and I'm just trying to build generational wealth for them so they won't have to do all that.
Hmm. Hmm. Do you find that, because everything stemmed from somewhere, right? It's like, I mean, this problem didn't just now exist. Domestic violence, that just didn't happen.
No.
Um,
I'll
um,
tell you what they did. They brought in the stat. I'll tell you legally what they did. Domestic violence was considered originally just like, like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm thinking child abuse. I apologize. Not domestic violence. No, no, no. Sorry.
right.
Go ahead. Go ahead. And
No,
by the way, we
that's
have to
okay.
wrap up in 2 minutes because it's almost 9:30. But go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. So basically, now you done threw my thought out the window
Sorry.
too.
I totally was thinking about the child abuse, and I'm like,
Right.
oh
I'm about
God,
to say, what is
No,
Leslie getting
sorry.
ready to say? It's like, wow, she just kept, no, I'm back at it. Okay, so really what I'm saying is, when you think about it, do you think if you have two solid parents who are able to navigate through the system, but they have children, they have a better chance of a success rate that their children are going to avoid those pitfalls that maybe you and I might have had, because I've had conversations with my children, especially my boys,
Mhm.
on how to respond when they get in front of law enforcement. Other races don't have that conversation, but we have to have those conversations, right? Because really, we prepping them. Even now, our
Sorry.
girls, our
That's
girls, we have to have that conversation, because now they no longer just concentrating on the men. They're looking at our women. Your friends in jail for 11 years. I mean, that's a prime example of someone who now, I remember that it would never happen that they would take the woman out the home. Now
Mhm.
it's it's changed. Do you see that as well?
Yes, I see, and that was the shocking part to me as well. Like you said, it was a time where they didn't take the woman out the home. They actually showed mercy on women, but now it's like men and women, we're all getting treated the same in the system.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, Jasmine, I definitely, this is a very, like, I love this topic. This is right up my alley. Um, and we have to move on. We're going to be moving on to Molly, our next guest. But I encourage you, go on to the website if there's extra time, because I think there is, and I can open it up to more. But I would love to have you back on and discuss things that we can do solution based, that we could help and collaborate, whatever that means. If you're interested in doing that, we would love to have you back on.
Yeah.
You just go, like I said, go on to the website just like you signed up, and just wherever it's open, and then we can talk the next time about efforts. You know what I'm saying? Because I know the time goes by so fast. I'm sorry.
And we can
Right.
even have you. We can have you on all of our platforms if you're open to
Yeah,
that.
Yeah, if you want to. We got a lot going on.
We got a lot
Everything's
going.
different. Everything I do, I'm starting a lawyer, Leslie, which is all legal stuff. It's all like law and legal and that sort of thing. And then Stephen and I have real talk, real people, which is more just like fun and lighthearted. But we talk, but it's not gonna be like, it's not gonna be as heavy, I guess, but the Queens of Cause, this is all about your advocacy work. But we would love to have you back on, and if you want to brainstorm and there's ways that we can help assist you, we'd love to do that.
yes, ma'am. I appreciate it. I sure will.
Well,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. Thank
You
you.
don't have
Well,
to go anywhere. You can stay. You don't have to go
you
anywhere.
can say absolutely. We're bringing Molly in now. So Molly, I don't think, here's Molly. Molly. She might not be able to be seen, but she can be heard.
Yes. Hi. I'm sorry. Like I said earlier, I recaulked or re cemented my driveway today, and I'm very messy, so it got everywhere. So I'm a little bit. I'm also very vain, which is
Oh wow.
Oh,
the reason
Molly,
why
we
I do
don't care.
pageants. It's the reason why I do pageants, because I am vain. I do like over and above the advocacy. I was already doing the advocacy and the community service, so I said I might as well do it with a ball gown and heels. So
Exactly. Why not, man?
yeah, so I didn't speak. Hi, let me introduce myself. My name is Molly C. I'm 41 years old, and I am International Miss Tennessee 2025. And I didn't speak up because the topics that you were discussing were things that I have a background in, and they all hit personally. And I just wanted to learn. And I know 30 minutes goes by really fast, so I just wanted to say thank you, Jazmin, for bringing that to people's awareness. I love topics like that, and I would love to join in the conversation to come back and talk. But I wanted her to have her full 30 minutes, so that's why I didn't say anything. But it was a great topic. I really enjoyed listening, and I learned some things about some different statistics that I thought were wrong anyway. But now I have more
No,
proof.
I'm a big stats person. I just actually authored a book called "The Solution to the American Crisis."
Oh,
So I
cool.
had to pull all these stats because I mean, there's so much you guys don't know, and I saw it because of the work that I did as a lawyer. I saw it within the system, and I saw, and I was always big into the civil right. I was always big into civil rights, women's rights, minority rights, disability rights, against discrimination. So I've seen a lot of really horrible things go on firsthand. So I needed the stats. You know what I mean? I wanted to know, and that just
Right.
validated what I thought.
Right. Right. And I think that that is the biggest issue that we have with our present systems in America is that people are not getting the right statistics. They are not getting the right information. They are getting buzzwords, and they are listening to mainstream news. And I'm not going to just say it's one
True.
political party over another. It's
Yeah.
both of them do this a lot, some by lies of omission and others just outright lies. But they highlight things to make people click and get angry. And it might be a true statistic, but they're not giving the context, or they're not giving the full story behind it. And there's so much misinformation. I'll meet people daily, and I don't do small talk. I do politics and religion. They'll be
Yeah.
like, hi, my name is this, and I believe this. I have talks with people a lot, and I what I have noticed is that we, as an American people, because I've lived in various states, tend to agree more than we disagree. and it is how it's phrased to make people understand what they're saying yes to or not, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, no, definitely. Well, that's why I said, like, how can you rely on statistics when there's a choice as to who's going to get prosecuted? How can you say how many people have convicted
Exactly.
are committing crimes or convicted when 60% of the people are going sky free? But anyways,
Exactly.
on another note, tell us about your platform, how you got involved, if you had a personal, connection to it that drove, that it motivated it.
Okay, so you can't see me, and my name is Molly. I was named after my grandmother, but I am black. I'm not mixed. I'm not biracial. I'm black. I grew up in Tennessee with two black parents. And so I went to a private Christian white school, and they like to teach that slavery wasn't that bad. And the rest, I was the only black girl in my class and only one of two black students, and that always set horribly with me, as you can imagine. I remember Andrew Jackson. It wasn't just slavery either. It was I remember in history class one day, and they were talking about how Andrew Jackson was directly responsible for the Trail of Tears, because the Supreme Court actually sided with the Native Americans, and Andrew Jackson just ignored it and sent all those people off their land and to die. And that hit me so hard that ever since then, I have been an advocate for slavery, for human trafficking, and things of that nature. And I know when people think of slavery, they think of the antebellum South, or they think the transatlantic slave trade. But we have more slaves alive today in the United States than we had during all of the 1800s and the 1700s and even the 1600s. But it is not getting enough attention. When I lived in Augusta and we would have the masters, they would have thousands of women and maybe children that were trafficked every year in the Carolinas, in Augusta, Georgia. And that is only 4 hours from me. That is only 2 hours outside of Atlanta. But it's not an issue that gets a lot of mainstream attention. And so, of course, I feel like I should advocate for it. I am also a survivor of domestic violence. I was assaulted by a guy I was dating while I was in the Navy, while I was on active duty, and I did get him kicked out. I did. It took about 4 years, but I pushed and I pushed, and he was eventually more women and guys who witnessed his abuse came forward, and we got him dishonorably discharged from the military. But the easiest thing was fighting. It was the healing part that was so hard. And I spent about a good 10 years depressed and suicidal after everything that happened. And so now I just want to be a support for women who have gone through it. And some guys, there are guys who have gone through it. And I've always my so that's a little bit about where my platforms come from. And then of course the racism issue is because I am black in America, and I did grow up in a poor black neighborhood, but I went to a middle class white school. So I've been around all ideologies that people can have in the United States. And I just love foreign languages, and I think it comes in handy for what is happening in our country right now, that certain groups are being targeted just because they are considered second or third class citizens. So those are where my platforms come from.
That's amazing. It's extremely deep. Absolutely, I absolutely agree with you. And it's crazy because I think Steve and I have had many talks on this issue. Um, it's I feel like I've been lied to my whole life, right? In
Right.
America.
Right.
I did a podcast one time. It's like, America, you lied to me. You told us we were free. You told us this, right? Only to find out when I actually worked within the system now, obviously not to the level of some races as far as, being enslaved, but
Right.
there's very clear people that are in power.
Right.
And they want to remain there, period. And
Right.
anybody, who's not a part is going that they are going to control them in some capacity. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Stifle, and really fast. I gotta go shut my door because my kids are yelling in the other
No
room.
problem.
I'm
No
just gonna step
problem.
away 1 minute so I can shut the door. Steven, continue on. I'll be right back. I'll be right back.
Sure, Molly. Nice to have you again on our
Thank you.
platform.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. We also have what you call, I do a segment called Wisdom at the Table. I think for a topic like yours, I would love to have you on my platform too, as well. It's a nice platform because we really get deep. We talk, I mean, we talking deep now, serious
Yeah.
issues. We talk about solution and the
Right.
why certain things happen. Why are we sitting in a country that actually is promoting these types of methods to destroy other people? So we
Right.
know it's all going on, right? We're
Right.
familiar with that. It's happening, but to know why is so important because, again, like we mentioned with Jazmin earlier, when you understand what's going on and around the country that you are in, it gives you the ability to navigate, right? Not
Mhm.
necessarily have the power to change, because you're only one person. You can educate, you can make people aware, but it also gives you the ability. I think if you would agree that having knowledge and awareness gives you better chances to be able to navigate through the system. What do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As far as going deep, I do have my degree in psychology, so
Okay.
I do sit around and psychoanalyze everything, even things that I see on TikTok that are supposed to be just kind of skin deep. I always go deeper in my head, but no, I actually agree with you because technically I grew up in an environment, like I said, I grew up in a poor black neighborhood, so I should have become a statistic. Me and my sister and my siblings, we should have become a statistic, but we actually had access to better resources because my dad did send us to a private school. And that private school, you know, some of the people were racist, but it did show me a better way of living that has motivated me throughout my whole life. I didn't enjoy my time in the military, but I knew I had options and I knew how to get the most out of my time in there because of the foundation that I had where I did have people in my private school who did teach me what kind of doors to knock on and they will help you. I think that a lot of people think that if you're born into a certain situation that you have to stay there and that nobody wants to help you. And there, if you look online, you'll see a lot of people saying, "Oh, you're just a victim. You just have a victim mentality." But if you get offline and you start meeting real people, you will see that there are some really, really amazing people in this world who will go out of their way to help you because they either understand your situation or they just that's just a part of their nature is to help them. So I would say my wisdom came because of that one benefit of being able to go to a private school and learning how to talk to people who are not of the same class, as I would say, of where I was born. And a lot of minorities don't have that. They don't have that. They don't understand, they wouldn't even understand. A lot of people that I grew up with wouldn't even understand how to go to those doors, how to even find them. So right, that wisdom, it comes from knowing the right people and having the right type of education.
And I want to point something out to you, because in my race, it's people see. I had a very unique. Steven knows my background. I'm not going to get into it right now. I had a very unique experience growing up, um,
Uh-huh.
and I know so many people just think, oh, discrimination's gone. We've evolved, right? Everything's
Right.
like moving on. Like it's not like it used to be. People don't understand. And I always said this and I'll keep saying this, it's gone nowhere. They've just gotten better at hiding it. Okay.
Right.
Until you see statistics change, like legitimately change, it's a long road. And I see it I see like, if you guys don't know, each state has a 3-branch government. Our federal government has a 3-branch government, but most people's experience is in the judiciary branch, which is your court system. Okay.
Right.
And there is because of judicial discretion, because of prosecutorial discretion, because of the fact that, your justice is determined on how much money you have, right? It really is, as far as, lawyering a case. Like, I can do a much better job when someone gives me money for a court reporter and transcripts and all these other things that cost a lot of money. But for the normal person that doesn't have all that extra money, it's not realistic. You're not getting a fair shake at all. But it's these little things that all add together, the choices and everything that keep a race repressed. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's really, we've got a long way to go. And I really fault on my end, because that's where my experience lies. I fault the judicial system immensely. And you heard our previous conversation about the prosecutorial discretion and them choosing who to prosecute. I mean, how do you make money? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, when you're a little kid, how many mistakes do little kids make? I mean, that's kind of your learning curve, right?
Right.
But what happens? You get something on your record, or you're 18, you just come out, you're pretty much still a kid. You get something on your record that follows you for the next 20 years or so. It's hard. Yeah.
It is hard. That reminds me of something I learned when I was getting my psychology degree, that is not widely known outside of psychological circles or medical circles, is that once a group, or in this case, a race of people, a class of people, have been pushed down so far, they will start to see a recession in every aspect of their life. And they will, to the point where that even as a what's it called, on the IQ side, you'll start to see that the IQs over the various race of people will start to go down. And that's not to say that they are not as smart as other people. It just has to do with a not knowing how to take a test, if that makes sense, because of the lack of education.
I agree with you, Molly. But wouldn't you agree that that's a mentality that's been infused into a generation of people that is now metastasized to the next generations?
That's exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
Different words, but I
Right.
would.
Yeah.
If we're gonna just kind of narrow this down to Black people, if you look at us after slavery, we made so many leaps and bounds. The trajectory of Black people in America was immense. It was amazing. We even had a Black Republican caucus. We had Black politicians. We had our own towns. We founded our own schools. And then Jim Crow came through and wiped that all out. We even have Black Wall Street that a lot of people don't know about. And I used to sit and wonder. I was like, after hundreds of years of slavery, in only 20 to 30 years, we had made so much progress. But then we haven't been able to make that same progress after the Jim Crow laws were, taken away out of the country. And I wonder if that's because during slavery, we were legally held down, but during Jim Crow, there was nothing to hope for anymore. And what I mean is, we weren't slaves anymore, but they got into our heads in a way that maybe they didn't get into our heads during slavery. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And that's why we didn't see a lot of the benefit, a lot of the trajectory that the Black race had after slavery, after the civil rights movement.
Yes, I definitely agree. But again, when we think about, let's just think about that word slavery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Slavery is not a new word in America. Slavery has happened as long as man been on the planet. It's happened in different races. It's happened in different countries.
Right.
It's just that America used it to their specific need. But if you do your research, and I'm sure that you do, you're a very bright young lady. And if you do your research and you look around the world, see, one thing that I try to encourage people to do is not look at the place that they live, look at the entire planet. Because when you look at the entire planet and how people are functioning, how they're being approached, and how they're being affected, you'll see that it's a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities. I think because we're live in the country of America, we're able to publicize a lot of what has happened to us worldwide. Whereas you look at communist countries, they kind of hide what they do. You really have to dig into them to really find out what they're doing to their people. So slavery is not just a specific word to a specific race. I think just slavery in itself affects people of every color, every genre, every race.
I want to go ahead because I want to say something about Stephen. You told me something, but go ahead,
Yeah.
keep because you told me, and this is something to think about. When I started talking to Stephen, I was blown away with his ability to analyze. I don't meet a lot of people that are highly analytical. And when I do, they have a very high IQ. They're deemed to be in the gifted program or whatnot, right? However they want to do it. But he definitely has a really unique and very advanced way of thinking beyond many people that I ever meet. And I said to Stephen, I go, Stephen, you're gifted. I don't care, you're gifted, right? And he tells me this story. Stephen, tell it, because the reason I say this is this probably contributes because it starts at childhood and how you view yourself, right?
Which story? We talked
The
about
one
a
where you
lot of
told me
stories.
that your teacher said you were gifted, but they wouldn't let you couldn't go to the gifted program because you couldn't get to the school. Yeah.
So when I was young in elementary school, by the way, I'm from Harlem, New York. So basically that's how I grew up. I grew up in the city of New York. And my mother was a single parent raising 6 children. And of course, the typical family without the dad in the home, that's where I came from. And I'm the youngest of those 6. And growing up, I would have difficulties in school. So they diagnosed me as being first with ADD. That's what they diagnosed me with. And then they said that I was slow. So they put me in a special ed class. And my mother, not being educated as far as knowing the system, of course, she's been affected by the system, but she's really concentrating on making sure her kids got stuff to eat and she's going to work and she's taking care of us. She trusted the school system to give her the right answers, not lie to her, right? So for a couple years, I was in a program where for kids that were slow learners. Of course, that program didn't work for me because, again, I wasn't slow. So when I got to junior high school, my teacher, I remember her name. Her name is Mrs. Acevedo, and she called my mother in to school, and my mother sat across the table, and she said to my mother that the reason why your son is having these problems because he's gifted. He needs to go to a school that's going to basically benefit him, appeal to his mental capability. Right now, he's bored here. He can't sit. Plus, as a child, I don't believe in ADD. I believe in children having a lot of energy. That's where I come from. We don't medicate children. Let them be children. So my mother says, okay, fine. Let's look for a school for gifted children. Well, the schools for gifted children cost money. And guess what? My mother didn't have the money to send me to a gifted school. So I never got a chance to go. Well, did that stop me? No. Eventually, I was able to graduate from school. And now I'm here sitting in front of you. But it just shows you how a person can be affected by the system in its entirety. And it has nothing to do with their abilities, but the system can hold you down regardless of what your abilities you have.
Right. And when you look at the individuals, when you're doing a case by case situation, you should always look at the individual. But when you start to see patterns across races or groups of people, then you go from the outside in, deductive reasoning to, okay, this is affecting a lot of people in this group. Why are they being affected like this? Why are they being tested like this? Well, is it the system, or is this the system that is broken, or is it them not knowing how to work the system? And like I said, the system is definitely broken, but there is an advantage of meeting people who teach you how to work the system, which is how I am where I am today, because I did meet people who taught me how to work the system despite being black and having every disadvantage. I wasn't gifted. I had three or so learning disabilities growing up. I wasn't dumb, but I failed out of more classes than I can imagine. And growing up through high school and college, just because I had learning disabilities, but I did learn how to work the system. And I've never had anybody call me stupid, especially in my adult years. My teachers just thought I was kind of lazy growing up, because I had one teacher tell me, "You give me C work, but you have an A brain." So
You're probably bored, Molly. You're probably bored. Or, I mean, like, who says that we have to all learn one way? Like, that's what you're very intelligent. Okay. So, whatever, I, I I think you probably just needed a different approach.
maybe I will say this, and this kind of goes back to what he was saying earlier about different cultures. I have more of a creative mind. I'm not musically inclined, but I'm very creative. I like the arts and crafts. I like photography, and I like making miniatures and things of that nature. And foreign languages always appeal to me. And so I studied Chinese, and after I graduated, I went back to school and I studied Chinese. So I have a background in Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, and French. I am not
That's
fluent
great.
because
That is so hard. Oh my God. I
I will
couldn't
talk
speak
about.
Chinese.
My wife would love to speak
Oh,
Mandarin. Oh
Mandarin
my
is the
God,
easiest
we love
language
that.
I've ever studied. French is the hardest language. Yes,
Really,
yes.
really,
I say
really.
in this day and age, and I will be competing for International Miss USA in January, and if I won, then I will go to international Miss competition. And I always tell people, or the judges at pageants, if you're an international pageant, you really should start looking at queens who are, more than monolingual, bilingual at the very least, especially in America. We have so many different languages. I live in Tennessee. Do you know how many languages are spoken in Tennessee? A lot of languages spoken in Tennessee. French is actually a well-known spoken language in Atlanta. You would know it unless you go there. And we have so many people that speak different dialects of Spanish and other native languages. And in order to represent America, you need to have the cultural background to do that. And that's one reason why I love foreign languages. So and that's another thing I said. I had to take a break from pageantry for some personal reasons that have all been taken care of. But I said, this is going to push me to get back into my foreign languages, and especially with what is happening with our country, that groups of people, like I said earlier, are being targeted because of now not just the color of their skin, but the language that their native language. I think it's very imperative to have queens who can go to those different cultures and say, yeah, I understand what you're going through. I can even speak to you in your language. So that's another part of my platform.
No,
I have a
that's
lot of
really
people.
that's awesome.
I
We have to. I was gonna say we have to wrap it up soon, guys. And this has been awesome. Like, Molly, same goes to you. You want to come back on? Just go back on the site. You guys, I'm going to be giving you guys 2 awards too for your advocacy work. So I'm going to be I have trial tomorrow, so give me a day, but
Okay.
I'll get it sent. It's a digital award and everything. But you should. Yeah,
It means something. Don't take it
I
lightly.
don't know.
it
It
I'm
means
means
about to
something.
something.
brag. I'm about to brag on this, and I'm going to tell everybody to watch this interview, guys. I've had
And
so
yes,
much.
I'm gonna edit it and then I'm gonna repost it. It's still gonna sit on the page, so you can, but it's streaming on TikTok right now. It's
Okay.
streaming on YouTube, on the websites, on this other thing called Twitch, and then other Facebook pages too. But we would love, you know, like I said, we would love to have you guys back on. And Steven, like I said, Steven's going to be releasing his new show, Wisdom at the Table. And he could have guests too on that show if he wants to. So get in touch with him as well. Steven, I don't know. You have their information because when they book this.
Yeah, we got it. I mean, if they're associated with our site, then we should have.
And if you guys
information, make sure you go into our site and sign up and send us, let us know who you are, and we'll
because we have a lot of things going on. We haven't done it all yet because we're trying to just get these podcasts going, and kind of bring up different various things. But we have a lot in store this year. We're really excited, and the whole focus is to promote women like you. Because you guys stand for something, and we want, to bring awareness. We're kind of like your promoter, if that makes it. We try to give like vehicles how we can promote you, whether, it's magazines. We're working on a Roku channel because that we want to have just a channel for these sorts of issues, and have, people have 30 minutes a week or, 30 minutes a week to air their own show and that sort of thing. But just keep in touch. And on Facebook, just go to Talk Pageants Magazine, follow it if you don't, and then you'll see the new shows that come up. And I think I just changed the website. You can go on the website. Yes, I did. And you can read the different shows that we have, and you can literally just go and sign up to be a guest on it.
Okay. I'm going to send you a private message on Facebook on how to do that again, because I'm actually dyslexic and I have ADHD and I have a really hard time navigating. So when you
No worries. We'll help you. Don't even worry.
We'll walk you
Okay,
through.
cool.
We'll walk you through whatever you need. And also too, you probably wondering why I'm sitting here. Well, I believe in our women and I support women. We don't forget about the men. We're important too. But I just think being on this platform lets you know that we do understand from a man's perspective what's going on with women. So I hope that you guys.
He's one of the best husbands I think I've ever encountered in my life. The way he is with his wife, I have never seen such an amazing husband in my life. So that speaks the world, Stephen, of you.
No, I'm very happy to have more men in this because everything is.
And I'm going to bring
everything
more.
is so divisive right now. To have men and women join together in conversation of how can we help, how can we serve our communities. I think that's priceless. And no, I'm very happy to have done this interview with you guys, and I hope to be back on both of your
Absolutely.
shows.
Just go to the website, sign up, and so we're gonna end, but go to the website, sign up, private message, whatever we have to do. And I just have a little clip that I'm gonna play at the end. I'm actually speaking to two African American women in Washington, D.C., who are doing amazing work for a lot of the issues that you women have just talked about. So I'm gonna end with that. And thank you guys a million. Thank you. And you can stay on and watch, and then you just log off as soon as it's off. You just go off after that.
It was nice to meet you both. Jazmin and Molly.
At watching our kids be basically taken from families without money, just because they didn't have money. Because to be honest with you, some of the biggest leaders of this world came from absolutely nothing, and it was coming from nothing that made them who they are. So who is the United States now to tell us, I got to take your kid away because you don't make enough? I'm going to go send them with, this family that makes more money. Like, that doesn't build character, But I'm just so angry about, what's going on.